So, dear colleagues, since we are running late, already about 15-20 minutes, let's immediately continue. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this session now aims at exchanging on the situation in the Middle East in relation to the European CFSP CSDP. If you wish to take the floor, you now should be familiar with the system, and if not, remember an instruction sheet on your table explains you how to register your request. So please feel free to already indicate whether you would like to take the floor. Colleagues, we don't have speakers for this urgent debate, which is traditionally decided at very short notice. It does not come as a surprise to anyone that we have chosen to discuss the situation in the Middle East. It is a highly important topic, but also a very sensitive one. I invite all of you to keep exactly this in mind. Before giving the floor to colleagues wishing to speak, let me say a few words by way of introduction on the worrying and very volatile situation in the entire region. In the morning of the 7th of October last year, we were all shocked by the despicable terrorist attacks committed by the terrorist group Hamas against Israel. In mid-December, I visited a kibbutz myself and was deeply moved. It was horrendous. Following the attack, Israel exercised its right to self-defense as enshrined and constrained by international law. This set in motion the Israel-Hamas war that all of us, I am sure, want to see coming to an end. Let me express my deepest sorrow for the innocent victims on both sides and wish that all parties must distinguish between combatants and civilians at all times. We will probably agree there is an urgency of breaking the cycle of violence, avoiding regional escalation and relaunching the peace process. The position of the European Union is clear. The position of the European Union remains one of unwavering support for a negotiated two-state solution on the basis of the 1967 lines, with two sovereign democratic states living side by side in peace and guaranteed security, and with Jerusalem as the capital of both states, and of course in full respect of international law. I believe there is no alternative to this, and I hope we can get the peace process back on track as soon as possible. One of the concrete ways in which we can help is an increased role for the two EU civilian Common Security and Defence Policy missions, the EU Coordinating Office for Palestinian Police Support and the European Union Border Assistance Mission for the Rafah crossing point. Both have the potential to do more in facilitating the delivery of humanitarian assistance to the Gaza Strip and in improving the efficiency of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. That's all from my side. I now open the panel to hear your views on this matter. The rules are similar than the one for former panel debates. You will each be allowed to speak for about 90 seconds so that many participants, the best would be everyone who wishes, can actually take the floor. That's all from my side, and now we kick off. Who's the first speaker? Mr. César Sánchez from España.
Estimados colegas, como saben, España ha sufrido durante décadas la lacra del terrorismo y quiero manifestar nuestra repulsa contra toda forma de terrorismo y, en particular, la acción terrorista del pasado 7 de octubre en Israel. Del mismo modo, es importante que la comunidad internacional y, en particular, quienes estamos aquí, exijamos la liberación de los rehenes. Y del mismo modo confiamos que Israel, como país democrático que es, como todos nosotros, garantice los valores que nos caracterizan, los derechos fundamentales y el derecho internacional. Lo ocurrido nos debe hacer reflexionar porque nuestra seguridad, nuestras libertades no están nunca del todo garantizadas y debemos protegerlas de manera permanente.
Okay. Thank you, dear colleague. Next is Javier Nart from the European Parliament.
Tenemos un acuerdo de asociación con Israel y eso es parte de lo que se llama el soft power. pero si no hacemos nada respecto a este soft power, se convierte en no power at all. En lo que está ocurriendo en Gaza no es simplemente un problema de derechos humanos. Estamos ante una auténtica masacre, no ya de los 110 asesinados el otro día por el ejército israelí, sino por los miles que están muriendo, algunos de ellos de hambre, e incluso por los llamados desaparecidos, que son aquellos que están debajo de las ruinas y que nadie saca porque Israel no permite ningún servicio de asistencia. El acuerdo de asociación determina que tiene que comportarse el país, en este caso Israel, con principios democráticos y no lo hace. Y nosotros mantenemos el acuerdo de asociación haciendo pías invocaciones a los dos Estados, que esos dos Estados y esa negociación es imposible porque no hay más que mirar el mapa de Cisjordania para darse cuenta que es un mapa donde las colonias y las comunicaciones por tierra están rompiendo en 1000 pedazos el territorio palestino. Y nosotros seguimos manteniendo que es un Estado democrático. Es un Estado intrademocrático con un comportamiento genocida respecto a los que no son judíos. Es una auténtica vergüenza. Y si queremos que nuestro soft power funcione, tenemos que suspender el acuerdo y no simplemente hacer invocaciones marianas.
Thank you, Javier. Next is Markus Faber from the German Bundestag.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. I think as the European Union, our message should be clear. We're standing on the side of Israel, the only democracy in the region. This is also true for Germany, obviously, especially for Germany. I think what we have seen during the last months is that the Hamas has not just taken the the people of Israel as a hostage, but also the Palestinians as a hostage. So there should be a clear message from here for the Hamas to surrender, to capitulate, and to release also the Israeli citizens as hostages, but also the Palestinian people that they have taken hostage by now. That should be one message. And the second message should be for the Arab nations to step up and take responsibility for the Palestinian people, because I think they have the only legitimacy to rule in the Gaza Strip and to get rid of the urgent troubles we have there. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague Faber. Next is Charlie Flanagan from Ireland.
At the outset, let me congratulate the organising committee for scheduling this urgent debate, and thank you, David, for your contribution. On the 26th of January, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, which provides vital services for Palestinian refugees, announced the termination of contracts for several employees and an investigation into allegations of their involvement in the Hamas attack of the 7th of October. The allegations concern 12 people, while UNRWA has approximately 13,000 employees in Gaza. The Secretary-General of the United Nations has established an independent review group led by former French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna. I think that should be supported by everybody here. In the days following these allegations, a number of states, again represented in this room, announced that they were suspending further funding to the agency. This is a retrograde step. UNRWA supports a huge amount of vital aid. I'm a strong supporter of UNRWA, and I believe it's important that it must be able to continue the life-saving work in Gaza. I call on partners here who have suspended funding to reinstate it. I recently met the Director General Lazzarini. He's cooperating fully with the review. I believe there is a real crisis there, and we should ensure that we can support it in any way we can. We must help.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Bagnasco from Italy.
Grazie Presidente. La condanna senza se e senza ma del massacro di Hamas, un massacro che anche in epoca recente non ha assolutamente precedenti, ma nello stesso il convincimento che lo Stato di Israele deve continuare a vivere come in questi anni, ma nello stesso tempo con grande chiarezza dobbiamo significare che tutti i paesi democratici devono fare quanto possibile sul piano diplomatico per convincere Israele a dare delle risposte che non siano assolutamente intollerabili. Questo è un dovere morale che l'Europa evidentemente come paese portatore di civiltà ha assolutamente e da cui non può prescindere. Questo è il messaggio che credo da questa importante assise deve arrivare. Condanna totale ad Hamas, ma impossibilità di continuare con questi massacri di civili che non sono assolutamente tollerabili.
Thank you. Next is Tom van den Kendelare from the European Parliament.
Dank u wel, meneer de voorzitter. Hoge vertegenwoordiger Borrell werkt aan een vredesplan en een vredesconferentie met het oog op een duurzame oplossing van het conflict. En dat is natuurlijk lovenswaardig, want naast maatregelen op korte termijn hebben we nood aan perspectief op langere termijn. Het vredesinitiatief kwam ook aan bod op de Raad Buitenlandse Zaken. En daar blijkt dat de bedoeling zou zijn dat we die oplossing vanuit de internationale gemeenschap uiteindelijk aan de Israëliërs en de Palestijnen zouden opleggen. De vraag is, doen de Verenigde Staten hier wel aan mee? En is zo'n aanpak wel de goede? Want een oplossing kan natuurlijk niet duurzaam zijn zonder politiek en maatschappelijk draagvlak binnen de betrokken gemeenschappen aan beide kanten en dus zonder dat strijdende partijen zelf het akkoord bereiken en naleven. Als internationale gemeenschap hebben wij allemaal samen een hele grote rol te spelen, maar wij kunnen natuurlijk niet optreden in plaats van beide partijen. Wij moeten druk uitoefenen om onderhandelingen op te starten en het goede verloop ervan te bewaken. Alles is beter dan niets doen, maar het is de vraag of de Unie met deze aanpak zichzelf een dienst bewijst, of de VS hier inderdaad zouden in meegaan. En het valt natuurlijk te betreuren dat de rol en de impact van de Unie gehinderd blijven door het gebrek aan eensgezindheid en eenstemmigheid. Een belangrijke verantwoordelijkheid voor onze hoge vertegenwoordiger. Ik dank u.
Thank you, Tom. Next speaker is André Flauw from Belgium.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Tout d'abord, je crois qu'il faut vous remercier les organisateurs d'avoir ajouté en fin de cette session de premier jour cette problématique. On aurait pu en ajouter d'autres aussi. On aurait pu ajouter toute la problématique de l'Afrique. Alors, on a été choqués, on a condamné les actes du Hamas. On a été choqués et nous sommes horrifiés par ce que nous constatons aujourd'hui dans la bande de Gaza, où chaque jour, des enfants, des femmes, des hommes meurent et meurent de faim aussi, puisqu'un blocus a été imposé, et cela au mépris de toutes les règles internationales. On a été sévère et très sévère à juste titre à l'égard de la Russie lorsqu'elle a envahi l'Ukraine. On est frileux quand il s'agit de parler d'Israël et de condamner et de sanctionner Israël par le mépris que ce gouvernement d'extrême droite a comme attitude en mettant des gens dans un véritable ghetto. Et nous ne pouvons pas accepter ce génocide. Et l'Europe devrait non pas se contenter de faire des discours, de faire des idées, de préparer des choses. L'Europe devrait agir. Et d'ailleurs, les deux présidents, Sanchez et De Croo, ont marqué de leur présence, dès le début, leur volonté de trouver des solutions et de participer à des solutions. Critiquer la politique du gouvernement d'Israël, ce n'est pas faire preuve d'antisémitisme, c'est tout simplement critiquer un gouvernement qui ne respecte pas les règles internationales, et on ne peut pas avoir deux poids et deux mesures par rapport au respect des règles internationales, comme d'ailleurs nous sommes silencieux à l'égard de ce qui se passe à l'est du Congo, où là aussi nous avons une certaine frilosité par rapport au Rwanda, et même la Commission vient de passer une convention avec le Rwanda pour l'exploitation des minerais, alors que les minerais se trouvent, tout le monde le sait, au Congo et pas au Rwanda. Nous avons à réfléchir, mais nous avons surtout à agir, parce qu'alors nous ne devrons plus nous interroger pourquoi certains peuples ou certaines communautés ne croient plus en Europe.
Thank you. Next is colleague Mindruta from Romania.
Yes, thank you very much. it's clear that the situation the complex situation in the Middle East is concerning for all of us. It's clear that we need international coordinated effort that could lead to advancing durable peace in the Middle East when the conditions will allow it. The recurrent spiral of violence is constantly proving that a lasting peace needs a sustainable solution, and the only one viable remains the two-state solution, which is the only one that can meet the legitimate aspirations of the Israeli and Palestinian people and bring about a just and lasting peace. The post-conflict Gaza scenario that will be implemented should lead to the creation of a viable political horizon for the Palestinian people. We consider that both Gaza and West Bank, including East Jerusalem, should be governed by legitimate and representative Palestinian government. Thank you very much.
Mulțumesc, thank you. Next is Natalia Pouzitreff from France.
Merci. Je m'exprimerai en français. La position de la France a toujours été de soutenir la solution à deux États. Maintenant, permettez-moi d'exprimer un sentiment personnel. Le sentiment qui est l'horreur, le désespoir que m'inspirent les atteintes qui ont été portées aux femmes, au corps des femmes, quant aux violations sexuelles, aux mutilations. Et j'appelle l'Union européenne à dénoncer ces crimes comme des crimes contre l'humanité commis par le Hamas. J'exprime également toutes mes pensées aux otages encore détenus par le Hamas et espère que tout soit mis en œuvre afin de parvenir à leur libération. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Madame. Next speaker is Haris Gorgiadis from Greece. No, from Cyprus, sorry.
Cyprus, indeed. Chair, the first point is that Europe needs to become even more engaged in the Middle East. It is a region full of failed states, generating risks for our own security, for our own stability, from illegal migration, terrorism, even the disruption of maritime routes as we are seeing today. So we need the EU, through a much more efficient foreign and security policy, to remain engaged. A second point, calls on Israel for an immediate ceasefire should be matched by calls on Hamas to be disarmed, for Hezbollah to stop its own attacks, and for all hostages to be released. And thirdly, a two-state solution is indeed the only solution, but no such solution can be achieved if Hamas, Hezbollah, and other forces of fanatic Islamism continue to call the shots in this region, to the jeopardy primarily of the Palestinian people and the entire region. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. Next is Ivana Posavec-Krivec. Molim.
Zahvaljujem. Kolegice i kolege, stanje na Bliskom istoku je zabrinjavajuće. Hrvatska i hrvatski stavovi usklađeni su sa stavovima Europske unije. No ipak želimo ovdje reći da smo oštro osudili teroristički napad Hamasa i ponovili pravo Izraela na sigurnost i samoobranu, ali i na pridržavanje normi humanitarnog i međunarodnog prava. Uzimanje taoca i namjerni napadi na civile ozbiljna su kršenja međunarodnog prava. Kao i u svakom sukobu, međunarodno humanitarno pravo mora se u potpunosti poštivati kako bi se zaštitili civili, posebice žena i djece. Hrvatska je uključena u sve humanitarne pomoći civilnom stanovništvu u Gazi kroz međunarodne organizacije i nastavljamo pozivati na trenutno i bezuvjetno oslobađanje svih talaca. Smatramo da se mora osigurati neometan i siguran pristup humanitarnoj pomoći, među ostalim putem humanitarnih koridora. I na samome kraju, ne manje bitno, moji kolege saborski zastupnici u Hrvatskom saboru, u Parlamentu Republike Hrvatske, u nekoliko navrata u kontinuitetu su bili prisutni na terenu Izraela i svjedočili posljedicama Hamasovih terorističkih napada. Na to ne smijemo zatvarati oči, moramo naći rješenje i moramo naći pomoć. Hvala.
Voila. Thank you very much. Next is our speaker, Kimmo Kiljunen.
Mr. Chair, you are right saying that 7th of October last year we witnessed a brutal terrorist act by Hamas. You're also right saying that Israel does have the right for self-defense and all the hostages should be released. At the same time, one war crime doesn't make other war crimes justified. This problem of violence didn't start at 7th of October. It's much, much more longer, decades, maybe even 1 century. We have witnessed a vicious circle of violence and retaliation in the Middle East. In Finnish, we have a saying, make revenge, dig 2 graves. Unfortunate that we are now witnessing. The problem is that in one territory, one area, 2 nations, Israelis, Palestinians cannot live together. 2 religions, Muslims and Jews, cannot as if live in the same territory together. We have obviously, as international community, since 1947 proposed 2-state model. How realistic is that today when both Netanyahu and Hamas both reject the 2-state model? Okay, 1 state. Let's live those 2 nations, 2 religions together in 1 state, and that will be a democracy. I think that's the conclusion. That's one of the options. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleague. Next is Evangelos Apostolakis from Greece.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, beyond the war in Ukraine, the ongoing Gaza crisis in the Middle East and the rising tension in the Red Sea, we continue to face a hostile security environment and an increasingly diverse threat landscape and heightened geopolitical competition. The ongoing Operation EUNAVFOR Aspides depicts EU determination to materialize common security and defense policy. Greece, along with other like-minded EU countries, had led the initiative towards that operation, not only by hosting the headquarters for the operation in Larissa, but also providing and deploying a naval asset in the area of interest, provided that we are the pillar of stability and security in the southeast region of EU borders and trying always to do the best towards a common security vision. However, the decision for the operation was based on the practical modalities on the Article 44 of the Treaty on the European Union that enables a group of willing and able member states to plan and conduct a mission or operation with the EU framework and thus provide greater flexibility and swiftness to our decision-making. How do we envisage and what initiatives are you willing to take in order to formulate a common strategic culture, embraced by all, strengthen our unity and solidarity, and above all, enhance our capability and capacity and willingness to act together, protect our common interests and defend our value, and finally to make EU an effective and reliable security provider? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Aron Emilsson from Sweden.
Thank you, Chair, colleagues. And once again, a brutal war is taking place in front of our eyes in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, with severe consequences and a high amount of civilian casualties in the footsteps of the war. And I would like to make 3 remarks and stands during this session. 1, let's not forget that Hamas started this ongoing war with a large-scale attack, October the 7th. It was a declaration of war not only on civilians, but also on the state of Israel's existence. But this conflict goes way back during history, as we know. And just a couple of days ago, I met with the State Secretary of Qatar, together with the Speaker of the Swedish Parliament, and was interested in hearing their key role during this, with this mediating role in the urgent regional disputes of the Middle East, not only when it comes to the ongoing war, but also the conflict the attacks on civilian trade shipping in the Red Sea. And I mean, the crucial point is that we need to see a ceasefire, we need to see a release of hostages, and we need an immediate entrance for the humanitarian aid in much larger scale than today into Gaza. It's central to save civilians' life and avoid mass starvation in the short term. But the long-term solution is still a two-state solution, but also that Hamas attack needs to be condemned and anti-Semitism fought internationally and globally, which is a growing problem. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague Emilsson. Next is Teresa Scavenius from Denmark.
Thank you. I support those who have the interventions here that say that we should approach this crisis in the same manner as those, the way we do in Russia and Ukraine. We should need to have the same moral standards, every life that is matters. And this conference is about security, so it's really about understanding who are the aggressors and what escalates different crises. Hamas obviously is an aggressor, but Israel is also acting as an aggressor. So we need in Europe speak on behalf of moral and rule of law principles and condemn the actions and to end the human crisis in Palestine. Moreover, we should think about the way we tolerate the operations in Palestine today. It may also escalate the conflicts in the region. So it's really important that Europe is standing firm on the principles of international law in order to de-escalate the whole region and also global politics.
Thank you. Next speaker is Seda Güren Boluk from Turkey.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, chers collègues. Le monde est aujourd'hui divisé entre ceux qui sont du côté du front humanitaire et ceux qui s'y opposent. Chaque réunion internationale qui se tient depuis le 7 octobre est l'occasion de déterminer notre place dans ce tableau. Le massacre de 30 000 innocents depuis 5 mois se poursuit en dépit des résolutions de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies et de l'injonction provisoire de la Cour internationale de justice. Ce ne sont pas seulement les bombes et les attaques qui menacent la vie des habitants de Gaza, mais aussi la faim mortelle, en particulier au cours du dernier mois. Des conteneurs remplis de nourriture, de vêtements et de fournitures médicales ont été laissés à l'abandon aux postes frontières de Rafah et n'ont pas été autorisés à atteindre les civils de Gaza. En conséquence, à l'hôpital Kemal Edwan, qui est l'un des rares hôpitaux de Gaza à ne pas avoir été bombardé, toutes les opérations chirurgicales ont été interrompues en raison de l'insuffisance des installations. À notre connaissance, 7 enfants sont morts de faim en l'espace d'une semaine seulement. L'un d'entre eux est un bébé de 34 jours nommé Mohamed. Je cite son prénom parce que, comme tous les civils qui sont massacrés, il avait aussi un prénom et un nom. Bien que l'injonction émise par la Cour internationale de justice soit prometteuse, on sait que le rapport demandé à Israël a été remis dans un délai d'1 mois. Le contenu du rapport n'est pas divulgué pour des raisons de confidentialité. Le suivi de ce rapport par des institutions telles que l'Union européenne et le Conseil de l'Europe est d'une importance capitale. En avril 2023, pendant le mois sacré du Ramadan, les forces de sécurité israéliennes ont attaqué des musulmans dans la mosquée El-Aqsa et arrêté des civils. Les forces de sécurité israéliennes ont fait de la place pour les juifs qui entraient dans le harem shérif et l'ont fait pendant le culte des musulmans. Dans une semaine, le Ramadan de 2024 va commencer. La mosquée El-Aqsa et le harem al-shérif sont sacrés pour nous, musulmans, et la protection de ces zones ainsi que la liberté de culte des musulmans, conformément au droit international, sont des priorités. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Madam. Next is Enrico Borghi from Italy.
Grazie, signor Presidente. La posta in gioco così drammatica ci impone di usare parole di verità. E se vogliamo usare parole di verità, non possiamo non cogliere una preoccupazione, e che cioè l'Europa rischia l'irrilevanza nel teatro medio orientale. In queste ore sono riuniti per cercare di trovare una tregua Egitto, Qatar e Stati Uniti d'America. L'Europa non c'è a quel tavolo. Non abbiamo riformato i trattati, non siamo in grado di essere soggettivamente, giuridicamente protagonisti, non abbiamo ancora un esercito europeo e quindi noi possiamo discutere sulla liberazione degli ostaggi, sulle sanzioni contro Hamas, sulla ripresa del processo di pace, ma dobbiamo stare attenti a non ripetere quanto accadde nel mio paese nel 200 avanti Cristo, come ricordava Tito Livio, menzionando che mentre a Roma si discuteva, Sagunto bruciava. Ecco, se non recuperiamo la dimensione storica, l'importanza di riformare i trattati, noi rischiamo di discutere mentre Gaza brucia.
Thank you. Hulusi Akar is next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The massacre perpetrated Israeli forces continues, and the death toll has reached over 30,000 people. Especially, we are deeply worried about the children killed in Ukraine and in Gaza. The number of the children in Gaza reached to the 13,000. And we must work together for an immediate and permanent ceasefire and ensure unimpeded humanitarian assistance to the people under Israel's total blockade. Lasting peace and stability in the region will be possible with the establishment of an independent, sovereign, and geographically contiguous state of Palestine based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. The growing threat of expansion of the conflict is frightening. We are also extremely concerned about the Israeli forces' attacks on Rafah and the expulsion of the people from their own land. Any plan to forcibly transfer the Palestinian people is unacceptable. We are also concerned that some countries have suspended funding to the UNRWA following allegations against some of its staff. We called on these countries to reconsider and reverse their decisions. As Turkey, we are ready to contribute to the settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in every possible way, including a guarantor mechanism to facilitate the peace. Thank you.
Teşekkür. Thank you. Next is Carmelo Abela from Malta.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this subject for discussion. I do concur with your opening remarks as well. We all know that this is a long-standing issue, and unfortunately, we experienced escalation from time to time, including on what happened on the 7th of October, which we condemn and continue to condemn, but equally we need to condemn what's happening afterwards as well. We need to say loud and clear that all lives matter, irrespective of nationality, and the loss of lives should always be condemned. I think we are past the condemnation now. We need to see what is the way forward. And as a way forward, definitely there needs to be an immediate ceasefire. My country, Malta, as a non-permanent member of the Security Council, led a resolution, 2712, for a lasting truce in line with the provisions of that resolution. I think the humanitarian assistance and aid should prevail now, but also, and I conclude, what about the way forward? I do concur with colleagues that already mentioned that the European Union needs to have a leading and relevant role in what is happening in the Middle East. We know what is the solution. You mentioned it in your opening remarks, dear David. And I think that we should push as Europeans towards the achievement of a two-state solution based on the pre-1967 borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmelo. Next is our colleague, Mr. Caluvini from Italy.
Grazie, Presidente. Dobbiamo toccare in pochi secondi un argomento particolarmente scottante come è quella della situazione in Medio Oriente, una situazione che, come è stato detto giustamente e correttamente da qualcuno prima, non inizia il 7 di ottobre ma inizia qualche decennio fa. Tuttavia, il problema attuale a cui dobbiamo far fronte è anche quello della disinformazione. Ne abbiamo parlato moltissimo questa mattina per quanto riguarda Russia e Ucraina, ma anche per quanto riguarda la questione medio orientale, un tema che non può passare in secondo piano. Ed è grave che ci sia qualcuno che magari anche in questa stanza provi a mettere sullo stesso piano Hamas ed Israele. Hamas è un gruppo terroristico che auspica la distruzione di un paese democratico, e Israele, per quanto possa essere deficitario come tutte le democrazie, è un paese che da noi va rispettato. A questo punto l'Europa ha dei compiti ben precisi: intavolare e concretizzare il rapporto con i paesi arabi che stanno cercando mediazione in questo momento, ha il compito di cercare di mettere in primo piano quelli che erano di fatto gli accordi di Abramo, che avrebbero potuto e devono in un qualche modo svoltare pagine in Medio Oriente, e ha soprattutto anche il compito di sottolineare quanto l'unica strada perseguibile da tutti sia quella dei due Stati e due popoli. L'Europa si è ben comportata davanti alla situazione ucraina, l'abbiamo detto questa mattina, deve fare altrettanto anche davanti alla crisi mediorientale.
Grazie. Last speaker is Mr. Korlatsian from Romania.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Many have been said on this extremely complex, complicated and dramatic situation in the Middle East. At my turn, I would like to just underline 2 or 3 issues very briefly. First, terrorism is terrorism. And what happened on October 7, when the Hamas terrorists killed, executed, raped, kidnapped people, innocent people, civilian people, and also because they were Jews, this is more than terrorist. This reminds us of the Nazi regime, and this should be firmly condemned. Secondly, the retaliation military operation from Israel that started based on the right of legitimate defense as consecrated by the UN Charter raised during the weeks important, serious issues of international humanitarian law. Some of them, there are some explanations when we are thinking, for instance, to the fact that Hamas is using the innocent, even Palestinian people as a human shield. Hamas used, for instance, the Palestinian, the Romanian mixed families in Gaza in the first weeks as human shields, and we have direct reports. So very difficult for us to extract our mixed families from that region. But still, problems that have been said remain. But in the end, the solution is the two-state solution. And I will finish, Mr. Chairman, saying that the process of normalization of the relations that have been stopped on October 7 between Israel and Saudi Arabia and some other Arab states should be relaunched at the appropriate moment to give real chances for the peace process and for the two-state solution. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleague. Thanks for all your contributions. I will not dare to summarize the debate. The idea of this open panel debate to an urgent topic is to get a feeling for the different opinions which are represented through different political parties in the room and also through all the member states and others. So I would just like to say in the end that I would like to thank all national parliamentarian colleagues and my colleagues from the European Parliament for today's contributions. Our session is now coming to an end. Our next and last session will take place tomorrow morning at 10 and will tackle the priorities of the CFSP, CSDP. Before that, at 8:45, there are meetings of the political groups which will be taking place here in this building on the 3rd floor. Thanks to our wonderful and very kind Belgian hosts, tonight we are all invited to a casual seated dinner in a historic brewery called De Halve Maan, which means the half moon. The location is in the city centre of Bruges. You can find a map and all the indications in your file. Please don't forget to bring your badge, name tag to get past security. So please bring your name tag and badge tonight. We are expected at 7 o'clock, so please be on time if you wish to be able to choose where you sit. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening.